Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're going to be doing the full review on the Gigabyte X79S-UP5. That's UP5. Now, I've got the box down here. I have already done like a first look on the board, which I'm going to put the link to the side. We can see everything that's in the box, all the accessories, a good look at the actual board and everything like that. Put that video up a little over a week ago. So if you're interested in buying it and you want to look at the aesthetics and everything, go and take a look at that video quickly now. But we're going to be doing the main review part now. Now, if you would like to see all the graphs and the benches and all the kind of details that are I'll be talking about in this review, take a look at the link underneath, which will take you to the full review at Overclock 3D. Now, normally I would show you a selection of benches and stuff like that. But I think really with this board, it's going to be a lot easier if I talk you through it, because the actual kind of showing you the benches side of things, unless you're actually interested in the numbers, you're not really going to need to know. It'll be all the kind of things that I'll be drawing from the the conclusions that I'll be drawing from the tests that I've done. Now, as you can see, this was the board that I used in the H100 Ultimate Cooling Mod kind of troll video, because it was a Mickey take. None of the temperature results were genuine or anything like that. That again I will put a link to so that you can go and take a look at if you like. Now, the UP5, you need to get a bit of history here, and this is one of the reasons why I have taken a kind of harsher line with this board, because there is history there. Now, the UD5, when Gigabyte first released the X79 UD5, I had one sent to me straight away, and the power problems with it were horrific. And I still say to this day that board was very much rushed out, because it didn't give the CPU clean enough power. There was big V-droop problems. Didn't feel like the CPUs were ever really getting enough power. As soon as you kind of went past the kind of 4.2 gigahertz mark with an overclock, it got very difficult to get the CPU to go much further. I couldn't get that board to run at 4.6 at all. And even 4.4 sometimes would end up downclocking itself because it wasn't getting enough power, and that was even if you were putting silly volts through it. So, and I did many tests with the UD5 where I was running different BIOSes and all kinds of stuff, and I was quite involved with the testing. Every time I went back to Gigabyte and said, it's power, sort the power out. Maybe it's just the board itself, but the power isn't right. The UD3, to be fair, wasn't much better at all, if along the same sort of lines. The only thing that made things easier with the UD3 was the fact it was significantly cheaper. So you could, the overclocking side of it, you kind of accepted that there was a wall there for a reason. Problem was with UD5, the wall was in exactly the same sort of place, but you were paying a lot more money for it. Now, UP5, they've got these new super duper PAL IR stage, so power stage, IR stage, whatever it is, IR 35550 MOSFETs. Now, they do run cooler, but in all honesty, they don't run that much cooler. The board was still getting warm around there, maybe not, searing your skin off kind of temperature like some boards can get, especially where we use ours in an open test bench. They were still very hot. With this CPUs that we were using anyway, especially once you run the overclocks, we weren't really seeing a massive amount of temperature difference, and it didn't make any difference to temperatures that we were seeing on the CPU side of things either, because obviously where the power is right above the CPU, sometimes if you lower the temperatures up there, it can have a positive effect on the CPU temperatures. Sadly, I certainly not experienced this, and it was something I was specifically looking for as well. Now, the layout of the board, aesthetics, I really like it. Very much like the look of the board. It's probably the most positive thing I've got to say about it. Is I love the way it looks. I like the kind of the grey and the black tones on it. The blue works with it really well. The layout is a bit iffy in the fact that if you want to put your PCI Express Wi-Fi card in the PCI Express 1 slot, you can't run a dual slot graphics card. But obviously you can run that in one of the other slots. You can easily drop it in one of the say for argument's sake, the other 8 times or the 4 times lane, and still be able to get a 16 times graphics card in the bottom, if you so wish. But anyway, so moving on, there's Sas Ports on it because of the C606 chipset. You know, okay, brilliant. But let's be fair about this. Sas drives. How many people do you actually know with Sas drives? Now, we are talking kind of like serious kind of high-end workstation stuff here, and in all honesty, anyone that really, you know, wants fast performance are going to have a couple of decent sized solid state drives, and then they will just move data off to a storage drive or something like that. Sas drives, I think, is something that, you know, is seriously something that's just been kind of left, really. You know, maybe people out there, you know, are using them, but the Sas drives are generally, they're fast, but they're also quite noisy. They're really expensive. It's a very, very niche, you know, product to be using. And I think if someone that's, you know, spending that kind of money on Sas drives and stuff, they're not going to be really looking for a mainstream board to be running their stuff on. They're going to be running those drives off of either a high-end server board, so they'll, you know, spend similar kind of money but on a server board because they're not going to be worried about aesthetics, or because they've spent all that money on Sas drives in the first place, they'll be running them off of a RAID card. They're probably not going to be, you know, running them off of this. I think really seeing all those SATA ports down the side, it's just going to be something for people that don't necessarily know a lot about their kit. Are just going to be thinking, oh my God, I can fit 10 hard drives in there. I must have one. So I think that the Sas side of things is a little bit of a gimmick. Gigabyte shouted really, really loudly about the fact that this board, because of the C606 chipset, now supports Xeons. Slight problem with that is, so does X79. And by that I mean that X79 does support Xeons. I've run my Xeons on other X79 boards. I won't go, you know, kind of naming them. And I did that to try and overclock the Xeons, because Xeons are quite locked down in that you've got no multiplier options and stuff. You've got a little bit that you can do with the base clock. But to be fair, with the Xeons, they're just really not built that way at all. You can't play with the base clock as much as you can the 3960X or the 3930K. I don't even see it as being a viable option for them, to be fair with you. I quite literally would say with the Xeon, you put it in, you leave it at stock, you set up your memory, get it running at whatever you want, which I may say with a lot of the Xeons you can't really push them but much above 1600. Some of them you'll get lucky and get 1866, but that is CPU dependent, don't forget. Where the memory controller is built into the CPU, some of the CPUs are strong and will go a little bit higher. Some of them you won't get high at all. And if you run big sticks of memory, like I've obviously got the Corsair 32GB kit, which is 8GB sticks, I found with the Xeons, they were very difficult to get much above 1600 megahertz running like that. And with this, if you had all of them in there running 64, then it got even shaker still. Now that's not a memory problem, that's the memory controller on the CPU's problem. Quite an education for you coming in today. Now back to the UP5 specifically. Stock tests with the Xeon, some of them looked quite good, but the problem was the ones that looked quite good compared to like stock tests that we've done on the Rampage previously. When we did stock tests on the Rampage, that was done with the 3960X, and the results that looked better for the UP5 were because they were the benchmarks that were using the extra cores on the Xeon. So it was kind of a, it was a trade-off. When you start talking about overclocking results, it's not really brilliant. Now, this is kind of, I got it to 4.6. It took a lot of work to get it to 4.6. Now, one of the good things is I've obviously done a lot of work with the Rampage, and Interim is currently running on a X79, P9 X79 Pro. So I've got a couple of other boards that I can compare this to that I use very regularly. Now, one of my main issues, as I said previously, with the UD5 was power and the fact that there was a horrific amount of V-droop. With this, it was easier to get to 4.6, although I did have to put more work in than I really would have liked to. You pretty much needed to open up all the taps and pretty much put everything to extreme. It was the only way I could get it to run. But it still needed more volts than I would have been comfortable with. I was running 1.45 volts in the BIOS to get it stable enough to pass OCCT benches and long stints of prime. So we've got what I would call significantly more voltage than I would prefer to use anyway. With the Rampage and the X79, P9 X79 Pro, around 1.4, 1.425 at the top end is all you really need. And the 1.425 is the Pro and the 1.4 is the Rampage. So there's a little bit of, you know, difference between the two. The Rampage is obviously more of an overclocking board, more phases, all that kind of stuff. And really the Pro, you just needed that little bit of extra to make sure that obviously where I'm doing renders and the machine's on for days upon end and all that kind of stuff, just to make sure that it was 110% stable. So back to the Gigabyte 1.45 in BIOS. Get into Windows, open up CPU-Z, and CPU-Z reads 1.392 volts. So there's like 0.05 volts V-droop there straight away. It doesn't really move much when you put it under load or anything like that, but there's a horrific amount of V-droop there straight away. Now, one of the weird things is at that 1.392 volts, it's stable, but you've obviously had to put it up to 1.45 volts in BIOS. So if the V-droop wasn't there and you were actually putting around 1.4 volts in, it would be on par for 4.6. That was with the Rampage, but you've obviously had to push past that point because of the horrific V-droop. So there's a bit of a kind of like a yin and yang thing there. A, it's stable at slightly, you know, a decent volts, but B, because of the V-droop, you've had to push the BIOS volts up so much further to be able to, you know, to counteract that V-droop, that you've kind of got a slightly good in one hand, but then a really, really bad thing in another hand. And this is the main thing that's kind of grating on me, and it is kind of like an open wound, and it's because I've had so many dealings with UD5 in the past that I kind of feel let down, stroke disappointed probably is the best word that I can use, with the UP5. The UD5 came out a year ago, so they've had a year to get this thing running right. And in this day and age, I do not see that much V-droop as being acceptable in the slightest. I really, really don't. Especially from a really well-known company like Gigabyte. They're one of the biggest brands in the world, for God's sake. And really, none of their X79 boards have really cut the mustard. In all honesty, now looking back, especially now we've got to this kind of point. When we first reviewed them, we hadn't really done that many. We still haven't really done that many boards. But now, I'm like I said, I'm disappointed. When it comes to an award, and I'll tell you the award, although I've told you everything, it just about scrapes a bronze. And to be honest with you, I am being massively kind of generous with that bronze award as well. And I was having debates with my colleagues last night about this, because we had a bit of a kind of a conflab on the phone, Skype, whatever you want to call it, and the others really didn't think I should have awarded this at all. But when it does come to it, you have got those Sas Ports. It comes in, I think it's going to be coming in around the £225 to £240 mark, which isn't a cheap board, but for an X79/2011 base board, it's not massively bad. They are all around that kind of £200 mark. You have got those Sas Ports should you want to use them, although in all honesty, like I've said previously, if you need Sas Ports, I personally think you should either be getting a dedicated server board or just going all out and getting yourself a reasonable quality RAID card, because with SAS drives you're not going to need a massive amount of throughput, so you can probably get away with a mid-range RAID card, and you probably even get better performance. You'll have more options there, and also if you want to be running a RAID of RAIDs like 5 and 6 and stuff like that, maybe 10, maybe 50, whatever, you'll have more options with your RAID card. Yeah, so really the nicest thing I've got to say about this is I like the way it looks. And that's a really sad one. And one of the reasons why it is sad is because I do have a good working relationship with Gigabyte. I do like a lot of their products. I just don't think that really the X79 stuff is going to go down in history as one of their crowning products. I'm hoping that I'm not going about this like you think I'm, you know, stood here with a baseball bat trying to beat them down or anything like that. But as I've said, this product has just left me feeling massively disappointed, because after the kind of the letdown of the UD5 originally, I kind of had high hopes for this, and I really did think that they were going to come back nice and strong. They've obviously put a new chipset on it. They've got these new power things on it, and hearing the word that they've, you know, spent money on new power and, you know, new arrangements and all this kind of thing, I instantly thought, brilliant. We're going to have you know, a board that's going to have really nice, clean power. It's going to work well. We're going to tick boxes. And sadly, it's just not worked like that. And yeah, so just kind of feel, like I said, just feel disappointed. So we had fun with it with the ultimate cooling mod video, with the H100 and the 40 fans. But sadly, it's going to be getting all stripped down now, and you're probably never going to get to see this board again. But for now, at least, don't forget to go and look at the full review at Overclock 3D. You can see all the graphs there. You can kind of see where I'm coming from. The Rampage actually overclocked better than this. I know the Rampage is a completely different board entirely. It's a high-end overclocking board, high-end gaming board. But I really don't understand where they're trying to target this. That all they really needed to do was get the power fixed on the UD5. They didn't need to start adding different chipsets and all that kind of stuff, because all the C606 really adds is those Sas ports and the ability to run ECC memory. And for this kind of line of boards with, you know, this kind of target market, I really don't see the point in it. They would have been better off sticking with the X79 chipset and getting the power sorted out and making a board that should have been good in the first place the way it should have been all along. And all they've really done is added on more features and not fixed the problems that were there in the first place. So it's almost like they've taken a stale cake that, you know, it wasn't very nice in the first place, and just tried to cover it up with some different icing or something to make it look prettier, make it seem, you know, more, you know, a more viable purchase. But if you take my advice, I would literally kind of divert past this one and choose something else. So, in my best Top Gear kind of like finish on that bombshell, this is Tiny Tom Logan with another video for you. Out.